So let's talk about the different parts of the brain and what they do. Parts of the brain are functionals for different purposes, they do different things, which is why damage to different parts of the brain has different effects. It's why when you look at an fMRI scan or PET scan or something that records neural activity, you could figure out based on the location of the activity what's going on. So the first thing to realize is I'm talking about the brain, but it'd be more precise and more inclusive if I talked about the brain and parts of the spinal cord. So you don't need your brain for everything. There are certain activities we do that can happen without a brain, like sucking in neurons or pulling your limb back to withdraw from pain or vomiting. But for everything else we talk about in this course, we'll really be talking about the brain. So some of the structures of the brain that are highly relevant are called subcortical, which means they are below the cortex, which means they're in the center of the brain. This includes parts of the brain like the medulla, which control certain automatic function like your heart rate, your blood pressure, swelling, and so on. It includes cerebellum, which is involved in body balance and muscular coordination. It contains about 30 billion neurons, so this isn't small potatoes. The hypothalamus, which is involved in feeding sex and thirst and different appetites. They are going to talk about emotions or visceral desires. We'll return to those parts of the brain, but for the aspects of psychology that are distinctive for us, that make us human, they are mostly focused on the outer layer, the cerebral cortex. So the cerebral cortex, it is all cramped up. If you were to take a brain, pull out the cortex and straighten it out, like you're removing a rock and you got from the jack of your hair, and you have to straighten it out. It's about 2 feet square, so it's a lot of cramping to get it in. This about 3 millimeters thick. This is where the action is. This is where, at least for the things I'm interested in, this is where it takes place. Is where reasoning and language and complex perception comes from. Fish don't have any cerebral cortex. Reptiles and birds have a little bit, but primates, including humans, have a lot. When you look at the cortex, you'll see it has 2 halves. It has a left half and a right half. For each of these halves, when you look at it, you can demarcate the brain, the cortex, into different lobes. There's going from your forehead and swooping to the back. You have the frontal lobe, conventi null on the front, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. Each of these lobes wears different things, which we'll talk about in a bit. Another thing about the cortex through, which is super interesting, is that it includes maps. What I mean by this is includes topographic maps, where 2 things that are close together in the brain are similarly close together in the body. So there is a motor area where if you were a shock, parts of that brain, parts of the body will reach accordingly. Just like you'd expect, the middle finger is close to the thumb, which is closer to elbow. If it's close in the real world and your body is close to the brain and there is a primary somatosensory area, which is the sense organs. There, if you have somebody in the operating table and you shock people, they would experience things. They might experience a sound or a flash of light or a touch. In fact, in the occipital lobe, you have a map of vision, and in the temporal lobe, you have a map for sound. What's really cool is, I said the map is topographic, but the size of the brain areas don't correspond to the size of the actual body areas, but rather to the extent to which their motor or sensory function. So artists have drawn pictures of people if their body was proportionate to the extent that their brain was. You'd see the chunk of the body is relatively small, but their hands are enormous, and the face is enormous because there is a whole lot of sensation. There is much more sensation going on in your head than in your wall. Back, even through the back, is physically apart. so a part of the cortex with projection areas, but less than a quarter of the cortex contains projection areas. As I said, the rest is involved with the cool stuff, with language, with reasoning, with moral truths, and so on. Then the question comes in, how do we know this? How do we know what parts of the brain do what parts of the brain are what, and why? There's different answers. So one answer is we can scan the brain. We can use MRI, which is high-frequency magnetic field, to look at the activity of the brain, what parts are active. Then people do different things. We can also look at so-called natural experiments when people have tumors or strokes or motorcycle accidents in damaged parts of your brain, and we can ask the question where damage to which part of the brain correspond to damage to which functions. Through these different methods, we are learning about the different parts of the brain and what we do. We could talk about some certain specific things that can go wrong due to brain damage or stroke or trauma. So, for instance, there is apraxia. Apraxia is problems of actions. So you're unable to do action like waving goodbye or picking up before or can bring some food to your mouth. You're not paralyzed. You can make the movements if you have to, but you can't coordinate with basic movements into complex action. There's agnosia. Agnosia is a disorder of perception, and they're not like you can see, but you can't recognize. Some is called physic blindness. People with various forms of agnosia can describe a picture in terms of its part, but can't recognize the objects that are being depicted. That's a form of visual agnosia, whereas also specific prosagnosia, where you can't recognize faces. Oliver Sacks wrote a wonderful book many years ago called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Head. This was a series of profiles of people who had surprisingly neurological disorders, and the title case of the book was a man who actually had such an inability to recognize faces. He couldn't distinguish his wife's face from that of Head. Milder forms of prosagnosia, which some people suffer from, and to be honest, I got a little bit of some terrible faces, is that you could recognize faces as faces, but you can't recognize whose face they are, and it's very hard for you to recognize people. There's problem of sensory neglect. You get disorders that block out one part of the world. You might have damage to parts of your brain that will block out the left side of the world. It's not just a sort of physical thing. When you ask somebody with such a disorder to draw a clock, for instance, they'll put all the numbers from 1 to 12 on the right side of the clock. It says if they don't think of the left side of the world again. So maybe it's not even a sensory problem, but an attentional problem with aphasia, which refers to regardless of language. Some forms of aphasia are expressed like a Broca's aphasia, where you can't really speak. A famous case of somebody who can only use the word 10 will say 10, 10, 10, but could say anything else. Or then there is something that's called a receptive aphasia. There you can speak, although that you say doesn't make much sense, but also you have a terrible time understanding other people. Then there is all sorts of other disorders. There is the disorder which we talked about with regard of Phineas Gage and various forms of it, where damage to your brain is debatable whether this is true Phineas Gage. But there are other cases where it's much more clear. Cause you lose your moral sense, your sense of right and wrong, your ability to control yourself, to restrain yourself, perhaps your consciousness. Now we are going to talk about all of these things through the course, but the moral here is that there is some localization of function. There is some sense in which correspond to different brain areas. B again, which is an argument against dualism. We can see that in then everyone who argued that the mind is the brain, who would be hard-pressed to explain why damage to the brain seems to affect some very intimate and very important aspect of ourselves.